I like when you do that researchy stuff.
All right, let's go.
Paul, thanks for joining us. I dig that picture in the background. Who's that person I see over your left shoulder?
That's Buddha.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, Buddha sitting on a bunch of rocks.
So is it at the coast, or is that mountains in the background?
Well, it's kind of like the northern coast where it's not Northern California, where it's not so beach-like, but more rock-like, a little bit of forest where the ocean is met, so there's not as much sand, but more rock.
I always like looking at the pictures in the background, but I can't see it that well. For all I know, that could be a little kid. So like I can't quite make it out. So when you said it's Buddha, that's not what I thought you were going to say.
So in this office, my husband and I share it, and he's a shrink. And so we have to keep it very depersonalized because we don't want his clients to really know who or see. Not that it would be anything weird. It's just that he tries to draw that line,
Sure.
So we don't have, unfortunately, we have a lot of stuff around us from our kids. Like I've got, can you see this?
Yes, our data rocks. Yep.
Yeah. So we have little stuff all over the place from them, but we don't have any pictures in here of those amazing little geniuses.
How old are your kids?
Our son Cooper is 6 years old. He is, and I'm going to give you his little bio. He's 6 years old. He is orange belt in Taekwondo.
Nice.
He's in a soccer academy. He's just an amazing athlete. He is studying gymnastics. He plays basketball. He loves to create things, not as much draw, but take like things and glue it together. And he's a freak about math. The dude can already, he's in first grade. He can already do division, like completely on his own. It's insane.
That's a pretty deadly combination, because usually when you're that good with athletics, or I don't know, maybe that was just the people that I knew grew up, you also didn't have this bit of artistic and math quality about you as well.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that, whatever he gets his hands on or touches, he's like 100%. Like he's
really
got that personality where he's like, I'm going to do a lot, and when I do, I'm giving him my all. We need to work with him on not being so upset if that 100% that he gives is not perfect. Like he gets really upset about it. A lot of kids 6 years old do that, and so our daughter Kennedy.
Okay, so we got Cooper and we got Kennedy. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Kennedy is our 3-year-old. Picture this. So 3 guys in a house, solo for 3 years, and all of a sudden this female is plopped in the middle of it. So 2 of the guys have not, our relationships with females are like friends or, our parents, but that was it's not as strong because we're not living with them every day. Both Aaron and I really haven't dated women. And then Cooper was like just around the 3 of us. And so now all of a sudden we have this beautiful, spirited, very energetic female. And we're like, why are you crying? What's going on?
What is this strange being? That's right.
What is this? What's happening? It's so different. You don't get it.
Can I just say how crazy it is that he has a 3-year-old daughter named Kennedy, and I have a 3-year-old daughter named Kennedy, who's also very energetic.
There you go.
That's cool. I love the name Kennedy. Like I've always loved that name.
Cooper and Kennedy both are really good names. Those are good names.
For
it
sure.
Speaks to that name Kennedy, like gives you, I named her after Jackie O. And that's what she like kind of carries that presence. She like walks in a room and everybody's like, who are you? And she knows it kind of, you know what I mean? Like she really, she owns it pretty well.
Right.
I don't know if your daughter's like that or not, Thomas.
My daughter is named after the Kennedys.
Oh.
And her original name, although it was too long, and we went with a shorter middle name. Her original name was going to be Kennedy Jacqueline Stillbinder.
Oh, wow.
And
That's beautiful.
yeah, so it was going to be a good combo, but we started writing it out and realized it's like 50 characters. So she could never sign a mortgage document.
That would take forever, right?
That's funny. So what does Cooper think of Kennedy? Like, is Cooper very protective? Is he gotten into big brother mode yet, or how's that working?
Yeah, you see it a lot. Like you see very, he's just coming out of that stage of he's really starting to get to understand how to control his emotions and reactions. And of course, it helps having a shrink in the house because that's like Aaron's main focus with our kids. Like, you control how you feel. Don't worry about anybody else. Just concentrate on your response, right? And so he's really owning that. And since he's been owning it, he's much more of, in fact, it was funny. We just went, I don't know if you guys heard about what was it called? The cyclone boom that hit California.
Oh, the bomb cyclone. Yeah.
Yeah. I love media. It's just like this. I was like, yeah, it rained for 24 hours. Like, yeah, it was a lot of rain.
Come on, Paul. It was called a bomb cyclone. It had to be way more than just that.
I know. My mom called me. She's like, "Are you guys okay?" And I'm like,
the bomb hit you. That's right.
So we went bowling to stay out of the rain. And it was really, Cooper loves to bowl. He's been bowling since he was like 3 years old. And he for the first time, I really saw him like engage with Kennedy I'm going to show you something I know, and I'm going to show you everything I know about it. And you gotta watch me. You gotta pay attention. Like, he was showing her how to bowl, and he kind of put her arm around her at the end of the beginning of the alley to be like, look, your ball's going this way, and you're going to strike down those pins. And so he's really getting to that point, to answer your question, of showing her how to grow up.
Right.
And he is very protective of her, with other kids, and even with us. Like, if she's crying, she's like, Papa, he'll look at me and say, Papa, don't, just go give her a hug. Like, you've got to make sure she's okay. And
Wow.
I think to myself, yeah, well, it's not your kid, so why don't you get out of here?
Yeah, but you're wrong about that, though. You know what I mean? Like, he's never going to see it that way. My wife and I, we have two boys, and they're older. One's in college. One's on a church mission, actually, in London, in England. And so he's going to be gone for a little bit. But there was a point at which I think one of the things I'm most proud of as a parent is that somehow, and I don't know, they don't come with a manual, and whatever books you read that other people wrote, you throw your little ball of cells and neurons into this mix that are completely different than somebody else's, big ball of cells. I mean, we're not the same. Those kids are not the same. The environment's not the same. The nurture, nature, it's all different. But at some point, you start to realize what you think you've maybe done kind of well in your house, and the other things that maybe could have been improved. My boys are buddies. That they get along. They fight. I mean, don't get me wrong. They fight, but it's sort of it's like a earned relationship, though. Like, there's only one person that's allowed to beat up Tate, and that's his older brother, Abe. Nobody else is allowed to mess with Tate. Tate's now plenty where he can take care of himself. But there's this point where you realize they get along so well, and they do take care of each other. And that's something to be incredibly proud of. And once we started realizing that, my wife Nikki used to say, you guys are more important to each other than we should be to you. There's a point at which you need to know that if all else fails, you have each other. And you need to own that and love it and nurture it. And they really have. So Cooper's already figured that out. He's already figured that out. So when you're like, hey, wait a minute, this is my kid. Don't tell me. Cooper's not thinking the same way. He's like, wait a minute, Pops. That's not true.
Yeah, that's as you're saying that, I'm sitting back and starting to realize, and they're right at that age that you're talking about, where they can start to form that relationship.
Right.
Now he's old enough, he's in the middle of his first grade. He's really understanding what it means to be in control of himself. And so since he's got that, now he can take that and nurture her with it. And, I think the next couple of years are going to be really, really joyful and interesting for us to sit back and watch that blossom. We've
Right.
already spent so much time concentrated on the four of us. We do a lot of stuff that is very bond-like experiences. Jump in the car and just drive somewhere for a week and do adventures. And as you start to do that, you really realize that it's your collective. Like this is what it's about. This is what it's for. This is our purposes. And you start to take that and then evolve that into understanding each other more and what needs are with each other. And I think what's going to be really awesome, as you were saying, is to see the two of them get closer, and to really sit back and say, our family wasn't created the atypical way, right?
Mhm.
Those kids were adopted. And so they have different genetics and different bloodlines, but because of the respect and admiration and love and alignment with purpose, we're starting to form this bond that is pretty insane. It's something that's really special, and people notice it when they're with us. And so it's part of life, and that's where you get the smiles from, man.
No, I do know. And it's where, you and I were talking recently about how your life changed, and maybe your motivation in some ways changed once you became a father, once you started raising children, right? Once you had children in your life. Do you, and I want to talk about Access. I mean, that's one way you and I got connected, and I'm super intrigued by the mission. I don't know if that's how you would define it. That's sort of, as I listen to you speak, certainly there's a business model in there, and there's there's innovation, but it feels more like a mission to me than almost anything else. Do you, as you watch the kids, Cooper and Kennedy, learn and overcome adversity and learn how to get along, does it make you view adults a lot different also? And I bet that somehow relates even to what you're doing within Access and the other thousands of nonprofits that I see on your bio that you somehow touch at some level.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think what being a parent, what it did for me is it did my reaction to other adults' actions became much more like, that's not like, let's get real. Like, let's just have a conversation, work it out, and then move on, and you can move on and still have a difference of opinion, but let's be adults about it and move on. And it really kind of cut away at like the drama, the BS, the fluff. And it really brought things, I almost want to say a word like it makes things a little bit more raw or stripped down, I feel like, when you're a parent, but that might have a negative connotation to it. Would it, being a parent, my reactions in interactions with adults, and maybe it's because with kids, it's not always so real because they're so emotionally wound up or emotionally responsive. And so when I get with an adult, especially in business, but even as a friend, I want it to be much more real and engaging. And I want to find out, what is Eric about? Because I want to find that common ground so then we can build a relationship from that.
Sure.
Whereas before being a parent, being an adult, prior to being a parent was, you could have some, fluff, right? It didn't need to be so quick to the chase. I don't know if any of those analogies are ringing with you, but I think what I found, to me, becoming a parent, I always wanted to be a parent ever since I was a young, like 6, 7 years old. And that might be because I was the second oldest of 8 kids.
Wow.
Always, yeah. And so our age range of kids goes from 50 to 25.
Wow.
So a lot of my life, I was like bottles, diapers, and watching these kids grow, and being close to a lot of them and seeing what they've become as a human. that to me was the most exciting thing, because that encumbers like who you are, your love, that encumbers growth. You know, it's society, it's everything, right? It's intelligence, it's emotion. And so becoming a parent has always been this thing that I've just wanted. And once I was at the point of being ready, meeting, you know, a soulmate, and being secure enough in myself, when that occurred, it was a profound change for me. And I don't know if, you know, I've had this conversation with many people. I don't know if the change was because it took so long to become a parent, meaning, you know, Aaron and I worked on, you know, prior to having Cooper come into our life, it was 4 years. It was a 4-year journey.
Okay.
It was a 3-year, and there were a couple of failed adoptions. And so once we got it, the embracing of it was like all in 100%. And it was just this experience of really finding out who you are, noticing, to me, you know, us noticing that our kids bring out the worst in you almost, but that's just for you to become a better person, right? Mm-hmm. So if you had worked, this was for me, I had worked for years to bring down my temper, my anger. And as soon as kids started to come around, I felt like that boiling up a little bit, frustration. And sure. So what I had to do is really work on it, like authentically dig down and get rid of whatever was making me angry, to now where nobody would ever see me angry, you know, at all, in the worst possible situation, because I really worked on it. And so I think that's been my biggest takeaway, or my experience with interaction with other adults.
That makes sense. I really want to talk about access, because I think so much of what we can talk about, because I'm going to learn a lot in this conversation, I think is maybe going to come back to all of these things about who you've been for the last however many years, and then who you are now sort of is what created access, either the idea for it or the overall business model or mission. Give me a quick rundown, or give us a quick rundown of access first, and then I guess I'm curious why, not just what it is, but why it is.
Yeah, that's and it's really interesting, you know, and I'll try to step through this rather quickly, but the formation of it, as I sit back now, I see that you know, there was a part of it that was being formed subconsciously to support me in my personal growth. And okay. And what shocks me is that I didn't even notice that. I didn't even understand that. And what's most exciting is everybody's involvement in Access Lending Academy. It's supporting them in that same manner. So that concept of being authentically aligned, or being true and deep, is mind-blowing when you create a company based off of that, and you carry through the culture. Our main purpose is to bridge the gap of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace and education in the mortgage lending industry. I mean, you know, you're a part of the mortgage lending industry, and I'm sure, based off of you know, how you work within the industry, you see the lack of education in this industry that is responsible for anywhere from 17 to 22% of our entire nation's economic system. There's zero education. And so I started sitting back and thinking, you know, our fulfillment company needed to hire people. How do you do it? How do you do it in an industry that the constant response is, you have no experience, we just can't take you. We don't have enough time, I'm so sorry. You know, to me, that's just that response is kind of a cop-out almost, right? You know, you got to be diligent. We were just talking about our kids, you have to grow, you have to experience, you have to learn, you have to educate. You know, as parents, that's all we do, right? As spouses, that's all we do. We educate ourselves, we educate each other. And so I started thinking back, to some of the mentorship programs that I had brought together in other lenders, and how well they worked out, because those individuals that were walking into the industry, the the gratification they had for the opportunity, the respect that they had for the employer that I brought these mentorship programs into was mind blowing. And in fact, my very first lender that I worked with about 20 years ago, I brought in a mentorship program. 15% of the staff are still my original mentors that I brought in 20 years ago.
Wow.
And they're they're just excelling so amazingly and moving through and learning, different aspects of the industry within this lender. So I saw the need for that with my own personal company. And I thought, wow, if I have this need for this small fulfillment company that services, 12 lenders, and we've got a staff of 15 people, who else out there needs it, right? And so then I started to step back and think, wow, I sit on the board at the California MBA, and I'm involved in their DE&I committee. And so I started thinking about this committee, and that's when I had the ability or the foresight to marry the both of them. So how we bridge that gap is we provide a free 90-day education platform to diverse individuals who don't realize the opportunity of the mortgage lending industry, right? Who don't have the ability to grab onto this opportunity. And we provide them this very robust 90-day education platform. The learners come to school 4 days a week, 3 hours a day. It's all done virtually, but it's live. Our Dean of Instruction is there to work with our learners, to nurture them, to make sure that they understand the education that's being placed in front of them. And just like any other education model, everything we do is based on building blocks. So our first 30 days is a basic foundation course, everything mortgage A to Z. Our next 30 days is a lab function. So our learners roll up their sleeves and they get to start to actually understand what it means to issue a closing disclosure and issue a closing disclosure, how to underwrite a file and underwrite a mock file, how to issue loan documents and issue mock loan documents. And so from that, we've got our basic foundation building block, we've got our lab building block, and then we put them into a paid internship at our fulfillment company. So they're working with a variety of different lenders and they're actually doing these functions. And they start to understand what it means to work with a real live underwriter. And then we work with our industry partners, our permanent placement partners, and provide them an opportunity for a job in their first career. These are individuals who again haven't had the opportunity to work within a career, to sit down and say, here's an industry where I can make it. Here's an industry that provides opportunity in so many different aspects, whether it's in an operations or in marketing or in accounting or in administration, it's all right there. And so do you see that beauty, Eric, between we're providing opportunity based on the opportunity that our industry has?
Absolutely. Well, the other thing that I hear is that you identified a problem, and the problem is I can't find enough capacity to support the needs of your organization at that point. Where do I find these people? And just churning the way that you saw the industry churning, which is I take your process or you take my process, right? I take your underwriter, you take my underwriter. We just play the spinning wheel. There's got to be another avenue. You create the avenue. But then after that, you saw another opportunity, and that was on the diversity side. And so you married the two. And I think that's a great story. I have a question though. So who are the people that want to be a part of this? And do they come to you? Do you find them? How do you come up with your list of students for the next semester, as an example?
Yeah, so our learners, it's a combination. I've done a lot of work with, some great schools like Cal State Long Beach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm enrolled in part of their program for, paid internships and what do you do after you graduate. I've also done a lot of work with vocational schools like Green Dot. I've done a handful of presentations with the EOP, which is also affiliated with Cal State Long Beach. Education Opportunity Program. And
Okay.
so that's a funded organization or a funded, nonprofit organization that supports students financially who have the ability and desire to go to school but don't have the financial means.
Okay.
So we're syncing up with a lot of different, really robust, fantastic organizations nationwide that are working in conjunction with Access Lending Academy's purpose and mission. We also find students and learners through, this is going to sound really silly, but just a basic advertisement about our paid internship. And I can't tell you the enormous response we get when we do that, because our industry is known by so many people. And so many people want to break into the industry, but they're stopped with the door being slammed in their face if they don't have experience. And it's a shame to me that our industry is missing out on these diverse individuals who come to the table with so much enthusiasm and desire to be successful. And if given this opportunity, some of in our second class, we've placed all 3 of our learners from our first class. I almost tear up when I think about these individuals that are working at these amazing lenders, title companies, and the reports that we're getting back from them, changing our culture, changing our environment, go-getter, doing whatever it takes to do the right job. I mean, they're the quintessential team member because they're increasing bottom line due to efficiencies, and they're raising and lifting the culture and environment. Now, one important thing I didn't mention, I don't think, when we were talking about Access Lending Academy, and I learned this being a parent, we were talking about, how we've developed with being a parent, having children and being a part of a family and raising a family. Because of what these individuals have gone through, because of their diversity, because of not being included, these individuals are, for better lack of terminology or an analogy, they're placed in a box, right? So they're either placed in a box because of their diversity by themselves or by society.
Mm-hmm.
I know firsthand, being a gay male that was raised in an extremely conservative family, that was told when I came out to my family that I would not be successful, I would not find the love of my life, that I'm making the worst choice that I possibly could make. Carrying that and seeing that and feeling that scars you, that really hinders your ability to launch, that really hinders your ability to understand your self-worth and to know that you can give all you have to give because you're being squashed. And so because of that, Access Lending Academy, I would almost say 50% of our success is based off of our wellness program, which we bring our learners into after day 20. And they ride the wellness program all the way until they're hired. Our wellness program concentrates on our learners understanding who they are, their self-worth. And it's about having a healthy mind, body, and soul. And so they work with one of 3 professionals on a weekly basis. The first one is a licensed marriage family therapist. The second one is a physical education specialist and meal nutritionist. And the third one is a communication specialist.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Access is a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So these people that you mentioned, are they volunteering their time?
Well,
I mean, at some level, right?
It's a combination, So
Yeah.
we pay them a little bit, but they're volunteering their time.
I guess the point is these people could certainly make a lot more money filling that hour by their own clientele. I guess that was my point, that you have good people that obviously see the value in the mission and are giving of their time to this nonprofit to create value for these individuals. Let's talk about the wellness program, because this is near and dear to my heart. I spoke to our group a couple of weeks ago just about my concern about everybody's physical and emotional health during the last couple of years that we've all been through, right? And just making sure that we're doing the blocking and tackling to take care of our minds and our bodies, whatever that is. For what I do is probably a lot different than what you do, Paul, but that doesn't make it right or wrong. We need to be doing something. Tell me about that wellness program. Let's dive deeper into that.
Yeah. And so, well, can I ask you a question before
Sure.
we dive deep into it?
Yeah.
What your purpose in the wellness program, like when you sit back and think, I want my team to be healthy and happy, what is that? Why is that purpose for you? What is the reasoning behind that?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. I'm pretty blue collar. If you could pay me enough money to dig ditches all day long, I would probably do it. I like to get dirty. I like to have calluses. I like to be outside. I'm sitting under fluorescent lights right now, and that's where I spend the majority of my day. I love what I do. But with that blue collar sort of lunch pail, I guess, mentality, part of it is to put you in a position to be more productive at work, which hopefully gives you some desired outcomes that I think, from what people tell me, they want, whether that's to climb to another level within an organization, or to be able to make more money, which ultimately provides outcomes that allow you to provide for your family or to hit a personal goal. But then the other one, and here's one that I really talked about recently, is I have a good friend, Brock Long, who was the former head of FEMA. He was there for the first couple of years when Trump was put in office, and he dealt with a lot of really difficult things, right? I mean, Puerto Rico got hit during that period of time. Houston got hit. You had the Paradise fires. And Brock's been on the podcast, and one of the things he talks about a lot is resiliency. He talks about financial resiliency, because you think, FEMA goes into these places that get hammered, and people for the most part aren't educated. Let's go back to education. You're talking about, obviously, a big part of the mission at Access is not just wellness, but also education. I think it all fits together. But a hurricane hits your town and FEMA comes in, you think, well, FEMA is just going to give me enough money to build my house back and get my car back and give me enough money to survive while I can't go to work. And the reality is that's not really what FEMA was created for. And if you don't have community and personal financial resiliency, you put yourself in a much more difficult position. Well, I think our physical and emotional health and wellness is very much the same, right? There's going to come a point where I'm sitting on a bus or a subway or whatever next to someone who's not healthy. They're sick. They have something that I could pick up, a cold, the flu, whatever. The more resilient I am, hopefully, the less that impacts me. Same thing if something bad happens to me today, and it's hard and it creates stress on my body. The more physically fit and emotionally fit that I am, hopefully I have a resiliency to be able to fight through those things and not make it an earth-shattering experience. So I hope that answered your question. I kind of went off on a tangent.
Yeah, and I was just really curious, and it's very much along the line of why we integrated our wellness program, right? And it's so that when an individual is at home, they're 100%. They're resilient. They understand. They can think about whatever situation is in a healthy manner. And when they're at work, they have those same tools. As a leader, I feel that it's our responsibility to make sure that our team, our students, our learners have the ability to be 100% all the time. Mm-hmm. They have those tools, because then, as you were saying, Eric, they're resilient. There's no excuse. They have the opportunity. They have the tools to be 100%. There's no excuse. Access Lending Academy in no way, shape, or form is a hand out. It's a hand up. Our learners have to work their rear end off. If they drop below a 70% GPA, they're out of class.
Do they have to do something to be accepted to the program?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a long onboarding process, and so it's absolutely not for everyone, and it it's just like my kids, right? If Cooper gets in trouble at school, for knocking someone in the head or not keeping his hands to himself, he's not going to go to soccer that day. He's not going to.
There's a consequence, right?
He's not going to have the things that he wants and that he enjoys. And so it's really important, I feel, with these diverse individuals to provide them the opportunity, but then to say, here's the opportunity. We're going to do the work together. and here's every tool you can take. I'm launching you. You have here's this opportunity. Don't screw it up because you'll never get this opportunity again. Take it and go for it. And they feel that. They can feel the sincerity in our communication with them.
Have you been approached by companies that would like to replicate some of the things that you're doing? And I know it's still relatively new. You're still probably figuring out the things that are working well and the things that aren't working well, and making the tweaks that any good startup is always gonna do, right? But let's go break it, and then we'll figure out what we need to fix. We've got great ideas, but let's go blow it up now. Have you had companies approach you about replicating the program so that they can incorporate it into their own environment, like an XYZ mortgage banker that says, we've tried rookie programs and it hasn't worked very well. Can I take some of your boot camp or your best practices, and whether I use Access or not, just plug it into a program that we're going to create?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, I am just finishing up a project. Our first partnership of private labeling is with Qualia.
Okay.
They're announcing this great new lender solution, and they agree and they feel, as do we, that education is missing in our industry. So we're doing Qualia education powered by Access Lending Academy. Okay. And we're going in and giving instruction to a handful of their team members, and giving them really just the basics foundation, so that these team members that are going to support this new lender solution have the ability to really understand what is mortgage, how is a mortgage manufactured, and what are the different parts of the manufacturing process, and how does our product play a role in that. And I think as we carry on, we're going to see some of that a little bit more. And I also think as we carry on, a lot of companies are going to realize how important that wellness component is, and probably take a look at what we've developed with our wellness program, because it really does, as you're going through, it's very much like our education, like our syllabus. It's based on the education building blocks, where we concentrate on the mind, we concentrate on the body, and we concentrate on the goodness of your soul and how to express that.
I love it. So maybe this leads me to something I thought of earlier. As you start to white label at some level, is it important to you that the companies that are going to take advantage in a partnership of what you've created on the education side, and I include wellness in that diversity is not as important to them? Does that still need to be or do we have the education on the one side for that group of people, and then under your umbrella, under your roof, of course, it's completely holistic, it's all of it? I'm curious where your head is on that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I was at National MBA, and I had a lot of people sit down and say, so does your program mean that you wouldn't take a white male who's 28?
And that's what I want to talk about, actually, is that question.
Yeah. So what I've been learning as I've been going through and developing Access Lending Academy, and to your point, it's brand new, right? I mean, I literally came up with this idea driving to my job, Pinnacle Home Loans, on a rainy day in November of last year. And I think I almost got in an accident, and I made 3 phone calls to 3 very important people who are now my board members. And I said, what do you think of this? And they mic dropped and were like, this is amazing. But as what I've learned 2 very important lessons related to your question. And this isn't digging for a response, there's diversity in everyone. At some point in time, every single individual has been in a position of not being included, has been in a position of being the odd man out. And what that does to the self and what that does to the individual is the exact purpose and reason for Access Lending Academy. Mm-hmm. Some people might have been in that space of not being included for shorter than others. My personal story, I could say it was from the age of 6 till probably about it was probably about 35 years of being excluded And a lot of that was myself, no longer society. There are individuals where I've heard stories where it's been a couple of years, a span of not being included because of their socioeconomic upbringing. But every individual has had this moment in time where they were forgotten about, where they were excluded, and Access Lending Academy is there for all, right? If we weren't true to who we were and our purpose, and we excluded that 28-year-old white male, we would be on the wrong side of that coin.
Sure.
Does that make sense, Eric?
Well, no, and so what I'm also hearing is, by the way, very well said. You may have not felt like that was super poetic, because I could see you sort of thinking your way through it, right, a little bit. Because I could imagine that there's going to be companies that have either already approached you, and I'm not even talking about mortgage companies. I'm talking about companies that may see value in what you're doing on the diversity and inclusion side, that are looking more for numbers and quotas. Really, and I have no.
Absolutely.
That's okay, whatever. That's a different business model maybe than what it is you're talking about. But what I'm also picturing is you're communicating is that if you take that 20-year-old white male and you teach him what you're teaching him, or her, female, and they buy into it and believe it, and it then becomes a part of who they are, how does that not create value when they go out into the working world, when they go out to the grocery store, when they go, whatever they do in the rest of their life, maybe they see the world a little bit different. I think about this a lot because I do worry that if we're so far on one end of the spectrum, we then disenfranchise some people that maybe could become advocates for something like what you just described. And so if you're not turning away that 20-year-old white guy, doesn't that maybe make the world just a little better place, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what it's really about. And that's why I love my other jobs, Eric, and the boards and other companies that I support running. But this is Access Lending Academy, to me, is so real, and it's so about what life is. It's the quintessential definition to me of success, where creativity plus innovation equals success. And that's always been a formula that I've fallen, and it has it's goodness. Everyone I tell about Access Lending Academy smiles, and they want to support it because it's a strong business model, but it's doing something good. And what we concentrate on, what I talk to my team and my board and our volunteers about on a continuous basis, is keeping that goodness real, because that's what life is. That's what we need. That's what we teach our children. That's what we talk to our spouses about. That's what we go and talk to people at work about. It's all, and it might be a really simplistic word, but it's all goodness. And if we can keep that, as we keep that a part of our culture and our environment, we're only going to deliver good. And that's why, so many people, when I share the story and I really pour my heart out, begin to well up. And that's why when our permanent placement partners have interviews with our learners, they leave in tears because it's such a good thing. And, this isn't a soapbox moment. This isn't a, St. Paul moment, right? This is, if we all just concentrate on this, then we'll all be cool. We'll all be good. And so to your point, a 28-year-old white male or a 28-year-old white female, the reason why they're coming to Access, we'll figure it out, and we're going to support them. Because everybody we're drawing to us, everybody we're engaging with in our platform, there's a reason, because our mission and our purpose is so soulful and so meaningful that we're just creating this energy that has this momentum, and it's just rolling.
Do you think that part of the reason why you get the responses that you get when the learners, I'm not saying students, learners, when the learners, right, progress into ultimately to their employer, to the work environment. They've graduated and now they're out doing their thing, and you get these responses. Do you think that part of it is that also it started from a different place from a motivation perspective? And let me maybe tell a quick story so you can kind of hear what I mean. You know, I came up in this industry as a recruiter, and my partner and I at some point identified that there was another opportunity inside of all of that, which is where the software company came from, which is where Model Match came from. And so, but one of the things I found as a recruiter was when I would ask people, how did you, especially on the sales side, Paul, but when I would ask people, how did you get into mortgage banking? Because to your point, there's no education. You don't just say, hey, I'm going to sign up for this class at my community college and I'm going to mortgage 101 and I'm going to be a mortgage banker. That's great. Well, the answer was usually that I was doing something else. I went to a high school graduation and my buddy rolls up driving a Porsche and he's got a Rolex on and he's just living the life. And I said, dude, what are you doing? And he said, I'm a mortgage banker. I'm a loan officer. I got to give this a shot. And that's usually where it started. I'm being super general here, right? Like that's not all the time, but there was a fair amount of those stories. When they start from that place, from a motivation perspective, that is way different than what you're describing right now. And maybe that's part of the reaction that you're also seeing, is that the intention and the motivation is very different from point A. And once you get them to point Z, it's in full bloom.
Yeah. You know, what's really interesting, you know, as you were talking about that story, Eric, and you asked that question, I went to our very first topic of conversation. How has my relationship with adults changed since I became a parent? And I was talking about, you know, being a little bit more raw, being a little bit more real, being a little bit more authentic, straight to the point. And I feel like that's what Access Lending Academy is about, and that's what it offers. So yeah, you know, some of the guest speakers that come to our class talk about, I started at an entry-level position like you're going to 5 years ago, and now I'm a VP of operations earning $200,000 a year. So there is a little bit of that motivation, but really what our learners are understanding is you're going to change the trajectory of your life. We understand where you are, we understand your ability, and we're going to support you in getting there as long as you walk with us. And because we're making them walk with us, and because they're doing the work, and because, you know, our onboarding experience knows their personality skill set is perfect for an operations or administration function in our industry, because we know all of this, and because you're working with us, and because you're being educated, you're not being trained, you're being educated on the entire process. So there in itself, we're saying to these individuals, we know you have it in you. So we're going to teach you everything we know. We're providing you with everything we've got. It's real for them. It's not a flashy thing. It's substance. And they see that, and our permanent placement partners see that. And people that I talk to, like you, see that realness. And I think right now, after everything everybody's gone through, politically speaking, you know, the pandemic, whatever side you're on, people just want to know what's real. And so I think it's very comforting for everyone that's involved to experience that.
For sure. Absolutely. I still envision that you know, you told a validating story is what we call it. So a validating story is that here's a person, they went through the classes or they went through a particular process. 5 years later, I'm VP and I'm making this much money. That's a validating story. It creates trust because I'm not the one that you're trying to prove concept with. You've already proven concept in some ways. I'm not the first one in the door. I guess the difference is that the motivation to walk in the door was still a little bit different, because that person that saw their buddy, that the validating story was the Porsche. That was the validating story, or whatever, the Rolex, or, you know, in your case, the validating story came second. The intent and the motivation to walk in the door to say, hey, I want to be a part of this. I want to change my life. Here's somebody that's willing to give me time to help me do that. It just starts in a little different place. I'm excited about that. You know, I was excited to have you I was sorry to talk to you, period, whether you were willing to actually record and put it out there on the walk. But I'm excited to see where you guys are a year from now, 2 years from now. I'm excited to be available, to be a part of that journey. If there's anything that I can do and that our company can do, but me in particular, me, Eric, to be a part of that journey. You know, something else you said the other day to me that I thought was interesting was that I think in your mind, you also see our overall education system maybe going a little bit, we talked about the vocational route, but I think there's more to it. I'd love your take on sort of, especially with small children right now who are getting ready to enter in, and Cooper's already doing it, entering into the school system, whatever that may be. This sounds like a model that you envision our overall education system may be gravitating towards.
Absolutely, 100%. At a little bit of an older age, right? But I really think our education system is going to transfer much more into vocational schools, much more into the private realm. And this isn't a statement of public schools are bad or not bad. I even feel that public schools are going to start going back to, here are the basics, but what are your interests? And we're going to support you in where your interests and your personality click. And here's some concepts and ideas, and you can go to class, you can go to school, you can be educated on this industry that might be a good fit for you. And so I truly believe that the level up of private universities, vocational schools it's gonna be much more robust. And I think in the very near future. And so Access Lending Academy has set itself up for, right now we're concentrating on operation functions, whether it's processing or closing, but we're also going to start adding in education platform for title and escrow, appraisal AMC, becoming notarized, sales, origination, and kind of run the gamut throughout the industry and with affiliates and solution providers. Because I think that as our industry grows and it more and more becomes adaptable to technology in the fintech era, there's going to be changes and shifts. And I think that some of those solution providers are going to look at organizations such as Access Lending Academy, who is an actionable oriented, solution, and say, support us. We've got the technology, we've got the team members, we need to be educated. And so I just have this feeling that's kind of the route of education in the near future.
So we're pushing up on an hour, and you and I knew that we were going to go at least an hour. We knew that was going to happen. I think we could keep going for 2 more hours probably, because there's other things that I wanted to talk about. Fintech. I want to talk about how you define fintech. I wanted to talk about setting proper expectations. There's a lot of things I actually wanted to talk about. We might need to do this again. We might need to.
I would love to. Yeah.
And you think about it. If there's a couple topics like, hey, Eric, let's talk about this next time, then let's just do it again. I'm ready. But before we break for this one, anything else you want to get off your chest, or any thoughts, or anything you want to pepper me with?
I think you're kind of a testament, as you were talking about your story, to this thought that, Access Lending Academy, our hashtag is because you can. And what my takeaway is, in every conversation that I have with someone that I go deep with, is, you got to believe in yourself, man. You really have to believe in yourself and your ability, because it's all within you. You have all the energy and intelligence and ability to build the life that you want to build. I'm an absolute testament to it. From the age of 6 to 18, I was told, if you weren't this perfect stereotype, if you weren't this individual that everybody thought you should be, you're not going to have anything. And that pushback grew my superpower, right? It gave me the ability to say, really? Watch me. Not only am I going to build and do and have everything that I want, but you know what? Because of when I went through, I'm going to support those others who don't understand that they have the ability. So you got to know your self-worth. Everyone is amazing. We're all intelligent. We're all gifted. We're all put on this planet with, awesome ability. It's your life. Do with it what you want. Go for it, And so the walk away would be like hashtag because you can.
I love it. And the truth is, everything you just said is actually, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to do. It's easy to say. It's really easy to say. It's easy to stand in front of that mirror and pump yourself up. But it's really hard for it to become actually a large part, not just a small part of who you are. It's really easy to be that person on a good day. Can you be that person on a bad day? And I will tell you, my journey continues because I am not always that person on a bad day. Heck, I'm not always that person on a good day. But I'm willing to fight for it. And that's why I think I'm really, attracted to people like you and Access Lending Academy and the things that you're doing. And so no, man, you're a mentor to people. You're an educator to people. You're somebody that, if you don't know Paul, you ought to know him. Get to know him. So look, man, thanks for coming on the walk. This was really awesome. I'm excited to get it out there, and I'm excited to do it again. So you just tell me when and where. And also, I was not lying when I said my hand is raised. If there's anything I can do to support you and Access, you just let me know.
I appreciate it. I definitely think that Model Match and Access Lending Academy could do a lot of good out there.
I think we can. I think we will. So I appreciate you, bud. Thanks again for coming on. See you, Paul.
Bye.